guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Jenna. I'm an SLPA in the state of California. I just wanted to create a quick video on things I wish I knew before entering the field of speech pathology and whether to become an SLP or an SLPA. I've been wanting to create this video for a while now, but I haven't really had the energy, the time, or the patience for it. But I just felt really inspired today on this overcast Saturday morning. So yeah, let's get into it. So I wanted to start with a little bit of background. I graduated from CSU Fullerton with my bachelor's degree in communicative sciences and disorders. Great school, great professors. I also completed my SLPA internship there. And I did my internship through a private practice clinic where I was also offered my first SLPA job. I was so excited, but unfortunately the company was bought by somebody else and the company completely changed, so I had to switch jobs like 2 months within. I wasn't able to get full-time hours, so I made that switch. However, I'm so glad I did because I worked for the best company for over a year. I gained so much experience there, great supervisors, great SLPs to work around and learn from. Yeah, it was just a really great experience. But yeah, that's a little bit about me and my experience, but now I'll start to dive into the things that I wish I knew. So the first thing that I wish I knew about the field of speech pathology is the scope of practice. So my initial understanding of speech pathology was based on a personal experience. I received speech services when I was in elementary school for my R's and my S's, so speech sounds. And looking back on it, I was like, oh yeah, I'll help kids say all their speech sounds. That seems like an easy job. But there's much more to it than just speech sounds. So I'll kind of list them off and kind of give you an understanding of what it's like. The first one is fluency. So fluency is adults and kids who stutter. So really the therapy is to help them achieve smoother speech and to decrease those disfluencies. Next one is language. Language has to do with receptive language, so understanding, and then expressive language, so saying the words. So it can be verbally, it can be with an AAC device, it can be with sign. It's just any form of expressive communication. Next one is cognition. So that has to do with organizing your thoughts, remembering things, planning on what you're going to say. So it has to do with your brain. The next one is social communication. So that has to do with pragmatics. That's really being able to understand the underlying message of something. So that's like idioms, not taking things literally, understanding the rules of conversation, so turn taking, saying appropriate things, so things of that nature. Next up, we have voice and resonance. So voice has to do with your larynx, your vocal folds, and resonance has to do with how that sound energy is transferred up into your oral cavity and your nasal cavity. Then we have hearing. So that's working with kids or adults who are hard of hearing or deaf. So really you're kind of working with the parents, if it's a kid, to introduce different forms of communication that is available to them. So that could be sign, that could also be introducing them to the idea of a cochlear implant or a hearing aid, and then working on their speech if they would like to speak. And last, we have feeding and swallowing. So this has to do with possibly kids who are unable to drink from their bottle without aspirating, or this could range up to older adults who have had a stroke and they're having trouble, eating and swallowing. The next thing I wish I knew is whether to become an SLP or an SLPA. So what the difference in responsibilities are and what the process is like to become either one. Essentially, the difference between an SLP and an SLPA is that SLP can conduct evaluations and create goals based on the results of those evaluations. An SLPA then uses those goals to conduct therapy sessions. They work on those goals, they take data from those sessions, and they cannot interpret that data. So it's really just numerical. And then the SLP is the one that can interpret that data. So that is the main difference. Another thing is SLPAs have to have a supervisor. So that's an SLP supervisor. So they'll come in and observe your sessions. They'll give you some feedback, some critiques on the materials you used or the strategies you use. So overall, it's really helpful because they do have a greater education than SLPAs, so it's really important to get that continual feedback for your growth as an SLPA. Another thing is SLPs do also conduct direct treatment. It just depends on what the SLP wants to do, if they just want to be a supervisor, if they want to actually do therapy as well. It really depends on the SLP and also the place that they're working. Also, if you're a school-based SLP, you have to attend IEP meetings. SLPAs, I haven't really seen SLPAs attending these meetings, but I believe they are able to only if they are accompanied by their supervising SLP. Now for the process of becoming an SLP or an SLPA, and I'll start with SLP. So first you have to earn your bachelor's degree in communicative sciences and disorders or speech pathology. Now, if you're going to be a post-bac student, you have to still take required undergrad courses to get into a master's program. So then you have to take a speech pathology master's program, and in there you have to earn 300 hours of experience, clinical experience with 3 different settings. And then you have to take a praxis exam after you finish your master's. I think some take it before they even finish their master's, not really sure exactly how that works. And then after that, you have to do your clinical fellowship. So in that, you have to be under a supervising SLP, and you have to earn 1,260 supervised hours of working as an SLP, but you're considered a clinical fellow. And after that, then you can get your SLP license. So you have to get your state license as an SLP and your ASHA license as an SLP. So that's your CCCs added at the end of your title. And then a SLPA, you have to get your bachelor's degree in communicative sciences and disorders or speech pathology. And then you have to do an internship and earn 100 hours of fieldwork experience. So in my case, it was 80 hours of direct therapy, and then there was 20 hours of indirect. So indirect is more so like creating plans for therapy, consulting with your supervisor, stuff like that. And you have to apply to your state for your license. An SLPA doesn't necessarily have to get their ASHA certification. I think it's just 1C for the SLPA title. That one really is not required. A lot of SLPAs I know do not have that C. Another thing to keep in mind is the continuing education that's required to renew your license. So for SLPs, for ASHA, it's every 3 years you have to renew your license. In California, for the state, I believe it's every 2 years. So for ASHA, it's a little bit more that they require for the continuing education. It's 30 hours. So what this looks like is you go on a website like speechpathology.com, and they have a bunch of continuing education videos or seminars on there where you learn about all kinds of different topics within the field of speech pathology. Or you could attend events and earn CEUs that way. So SLPAs also have to earn continuing education units. However, it's only about 12 hours. and that's every 2 years. So it's just an additional thing to think about if you're wanting to go into a field where, you finish your education, you're done, you're just working, or if you love to learn and you want to continually learn throughout your career. The field of speech pathology is a newer field, and we're continually developing new ideas and new things that work. So research is always coming out, and we have to keep up with our education. So just something to consider. The third thing I wish I knew is the different settings that you can go into. So there's kind of a divide between the medical side of speech pathology and more so the school-based or language side of speech pathology. So I'll start with the medical. The medical, you can work in rehab centers, you can work in residential care facilities, you can work in hospitals. That's doing more so with swallowing, more so with strokes, with cognition, with voice. So those are all more so medical things. On the other side, there's private practice in schools. That's more so something that I'm familiar with. And I believe as an SLPA, it's very, very rare to find something in the medical side. You'd have to get your master's degree. I want to share a little bit of what I know of the private practice setting because that's where I've spent my entirety of my career so far. I really, really love it. I work mostly with the early intervention age group, so that's like 2-3 years old, really working with them on their pre-verbal skills, having communicational intent, attention, any form of communication. So that could be sign, that could be verbal, that could be using a picture exchange. So things like that to help them communicate in those early stages. Then I work with school age kids. I believe this is about age 4 up until 18. However, my oldest one is 13, so I haven't really worked with kids older than that. So this could be a variety of different disorders. It could be language, it could be speech, it could be fluency, it could be pragmatics. So you could be working with a lot of different things with this age group. It's also important to note that you'll be working with kids with disabilities as well. Most of my caseload consists of kids with autism, so that's an important thing to note. So the fifth thing I wish I knew before becoming an SLPA is having enough experience before entering the field. So we work with a lot of kids with disabilities, and it is challenging, and I just wish that I had some more experience beforehand. That might be volunteering, that might be working as an ABA therapist. I do work with a lot of kids with autism, and quite a bit of them do exhibit behaviors. Having some experience with that is definitely a plus because there is a lot of that in the field. Also, I work with a lot of kids in early intervention. So that in itself, that age group, they do exhibit a lot of behaviors. So you also have to know how to mitigate those behaviors and also educate parents on how to mitigate those behaviors at home. So essentially, you are teaching these parents how to parent. And I personally am not a mother. So it was definitely a learning curve, learning how to parent. I've seen so many different parenting styles, and it's just so interesting to see what works best. And I feel confident in my ability now to tell these parents, hey, try this instead. But in the beginning, it was just a little bit daunting because I'm not a parent myself. So who am I to tell all these parents how to parent, Another thing I wish I knew, which is probably true for a lot of other professions, is the imposter syndrome. So entering this field kind of felt like I was just thrown out there and I just kind of had to learn as I go. And that's really hard to do in a field where parents come in and they expect you to know what you're doing. They're kind of skeptical because they know you're a new therapist and you kind of have to prove to them that you know what you're doing, which you do. It's just you're the professional in the room, and it's just very new because a second ago you were a student and you don't really know exactly what you're doing. So it's kind of like you have to fake it till you make it sort of thing. You have to act confident when you're really not. But all SLPAs, all SLPs have gone through this. It's totally normal. I still, to this day, still have some imposter syndrome when it comes to different disorders, and just because I don't have a lot of experience in that area, and I feel like I could know more, and that's where the continuing education and inquisitiveness comes in. So it's definitely a balance of things, but imposter syndrome is real and you will experience it, but I'm sure that's true for a lot of fields. The last thing I wish I knew is how tiring and draining it is to be face-to-face with kids and parents all day long as an introvert. So if you are an extrovert, this may fuel you to work all day with people, and it's great. However, for me as an introvert, and if you're an introvert, it is very draining because you do value that alone time and you kind of need to recharge before you get back out there. And that's something that I've kind of struggled with even to this day. It has gotten better, but when I first started working and I was working full time, that's 8-hour days face-to-face with clients, and I was actually at work for 9 hours, and for that other hour it was my lunchtime, and I had to, or I didn't have to, but I wanted to sit down with my colleagues and build relationships with them, which I'm really glad I did. But initially it was really hard for me. I'd come home and I'd just be so drained. I'd even break down sometimes just because that's how tired I was. But definitely something to consider, because as a SLPA, you don't get downtime, really. You're always face-to-face, you're doing treatment. SLPs, I believe it's a little bit different. They do have some time to do some documentation, doing the evaluation forms and all of that. But as a SLPA, you are face-to-face treating, and especially if you're full-time, it's a lot to begin with. I am doing a lot better now, but just something to consider if you are an introvert yourself. So that concludes all the things that I wish I knew before I became a SLPA. Hopefully it helped you out a little bit with some questions, if you had any. Overall, this field is amazing. You learn so many different things that you can carry into your own life as well. It's so rewarding working with all these kids. You see so much progress. If you have any other questions, just let me know and I can maybe make another video. But yeah, thank you for watching.